Tom maneuvered through the bustling interstellar transit hub, his gaze flickering between the departure screens and his holopad. The hub was a whirlwind of activity, with beings from different corners of the galaxy bustling about. He paused, adjusting his glasses, his thoughts briefly drifting to the project awaiting him at the lab. Just as he was about to exit through the sliding glass doors, a commotion at one of the nearby gates caught his attention. A crowd had gathered, and amid the noise and confusion, Tom noticed an alien woman, tall and slender with luminescent blue skin, looking distinctly uneasy as she tried to make sense of her surroundings. Her delicate antennae twitched in distress. Without a second thought, Tom approached her, his innate curiosity as a scientist mingling with a sudden urge to assist. "Do you need help?" he asked, gesturing towards the information kiosk. The alien woman turned towards him, her large, opalescent eyes widening slightly. She responded in a melodious voice, but the language was unfamiliar, a flowing series of musical tones that Tom couldn't decipher. Realizing the language barrier, Tom smiled reassuringly and pulled out his translator device. "Here, this should help us," he said, activating the device and speaking again. "I asked if you need help?" The device did its magic, and a moment later, the woman nodded, her face relaxing slightly. "Yes, thank you. I am Lyra. I'm trying to find my way to the Earth Cultural Integration Center, but everything is so different here." "Ah, the Integration Center," Tom nodded, familiar with the place. "I can take you there if you'd like. It's on my way." Lyra's relief was palpable. "That would be very kind of you. I am not accustomed to your transport systems." As they walked towards the metro line, Tom tried to engage her in conversation to make her feel more at ease. "So, Lyra, where are you from?" "I am from Cyrania, a world many light years away. It is much quieter than Earth." They boarded the metro, finding seats amidst a group of chatting tourists. Tom noticed Lyra's fascination with the passing cityscape outside. "It must be quite a change from Cyrania," he said, following her gaze. "It is," Lyra agreed, turning back to him with a smile. "Cyrania has vast quiet plains and gentle rivers. The bustle here is overwhelming, but also exciting." The metro ride gave them time to share stories about their respective worlds. Tom learned about Cyrania's floating gardens and Lyra's interest in human culture, especially Earth's diverse ecosystems. In turn, Tom talked about his work in genetic research, careful not to delve too deeply into the technicalities. As they disembarked and made their way to the Integration Center, Tom felt a genuine connection forming. Lyra's grace and curiosity were infectious, and her unique perspective on things he'd taken for granted, like the metro or the noisy, crowded streets, made him see his world through fresh eyes. Reaching the center, Tom offered his contact information. "In case you need any more help navigating the city, or if you just want to talk about Earth things." Lyra accepted with a grateful smile. "I would like that, Tom. Thank you for today. You made Earth seem a little less daunting." As Tom watched her walk into the center, he couldn't shake the feeling that this unexpected meeting might just be the beginning of something extraordinary. With a thoughtful smile, he turned and headed back to his lab, his mind buzzing not just with scientific queries, but with the possibilities of new friendships and maybe, just maybe, new discoveries. Chapter 2: Language of Gestures. The local cafe near the transit hub was buzzing with the mid-morning rush as Tom and Lyra found a quiet corner booth. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the scent of warm pastries, creating a cozy, welcoming atmosphere. "So, what do you think of our coffee?" Tom asked, presenting Lyra with a steaming cup he had just ordered for her. Lyra took a tentative sip, her face lighting up. "It's very vibrant," she decided, searching for the right word. "Much stronger than the beverages on Cyrania." Tom chuckled. "Yeah, it's a bit of an acquired taste, but it's a staple for most of us here, especially us researchers." As they chatted, another figure approached their table, a man in his late 30s with a friendly demeanor. "Tom, I didn't expect to see you here," he greeted. "Hey, Alex. Meet Lyra. She's from Cyrania." "Lyra, this is Alex, a fellow scientist and an old college buddy of mine." Alex extended his hand, which Lyra shook gently. Pleased to meet you, Lyra. Cyrania, you say? I've read fascinating studies about your planet's bioluminescent flora. Lyra nodded, pleased. Yes, our gardens are quite unique. I'd love to hear what you've learned. As the three settled into conversation, Alex's easygoing nature helped Lyra feel more at ease. They discussed various topics, ranging from scientific to mundane. Tom noticed how Lyra's initial shyness ebbed away, replaced by a lively curiosity. Lyra was trying to get to the Earth Cultural Integration Center when I met her, Tom explained. She's here to learn about Earth and hopefully share about Cyrania. That's a noble endeavor, Alex said. It's not every day we get to meet someone from the stars. What's been the biggest surprise about Earth for you? Lyra thought for a moment. The noise and the speed at which everything moves, but also the diversity. There are so many different people and cultures, even just here in this cafe. The trio laughed and shared stories about their experiences with different cultures. As they talked, Tom and Alex helped translate some of the more confusing aspects of human customs for Lyra. You know, Alex mused, you should come to our lab. We're working on a project that analyzes ecological systems from different planets. Maybe you could provide some insights into Cyrania's ecosystems? Lyra was intrigued. I would like that very much. It would be wonderful to contribute to your understanding. Tom was pleased to see Lyra engaging so openly. It's a plan then. We'll make a day of it. Maybe after, we can show you some of the city's natural reserves. They're nothing like your floating gardens, but I think you'll find them interesting. As they continued talking, the morning slipped into afternoon. The cafe's rush slowed, leaving them in a quiet bubble of shared understanding and laughter. Tom was fascinated by Lyra's perspectives, and he could tell Alex was too. Finally, as they prepared to leave, Lyra turned to both of them. Thank you for making me feel so welcomed. I was nervous about this trip, but now I am excited to learn more and share more. Tom smiled, feeling a warmth that went beyond the coffee. Anytime, Lyra. We're just a call away if you need anything. As they parted ways, Tom felt a deep satisfaction. Not only had he helped a visitor from another world feel at home, but he had also deepened his friendship with Alex and sparked a new one with Lyra. He walked back to his lab, his thoughts already on the upcoming visit to the lab with Lyra, eager for the new insights and exchanges that awaited. Chapter 3. The Bridge of Understanding. The Earth Cultural Integration Center was housed in a sleek building of glass and steel, its wide-open atrium bustling with travelers from across the galaxy. Tom and Lyra stepped inside, marveling at the holographic displays that floated above the reception desk, detailing Earth's geography, history, and cultural nuances. Is it always this crowded? Lyra asked, her antennae flicking slightly as her eyes scanned the bustling room. Pretty much, Tom replied with a smile. This place sees hundreds of visitors daily, all looking to understand Earth better. But don't worry, it's pretty organized once we get you signed in. They approached the reception area, where a cheerful young man greeted them. Welcome to the Cultural Integration Center. How can I help you today? Lyra hesitated, glancing at Tom. He stepped forward. My friend Lyra here is from Cyrania. She'd like to learn more about Earth's languages, customs, and how to navigate human society. Can you help her get started? The receptionist's smile widened. Absolutely. We offer guided sessions, interactive modules, and translation tools. I'll set you up with a personal orientation guide and access to our learning pods. Just a moment. As the receptionist worked, Tom turned to Lyra. They have these amazing immersive simulations. You'll feel like you're actually walking through an Earth city. It's a great way to learn without having to brave the streets right away. Lyra looked intrigued. That sounds incredible. On Cyrania, we only have limited exchanges with other worlds. It's nothing like this. Tom chuckled. We've had a lot of practice, especially in the last century. Still, there's always more to learn. I'm excited to see how you experience it. A short while later, they were guided to a room filled with sleek pods, each one glowing softly. Their guide, a middle-aged woman with a professional demeanor, handed Lyra a slim headset. This will allow you to interact with the simulations and translation software in real time. You can choose different scenarios to explore: shopping, attending a meeting, even visiting a museum. Lyra slipped the headset on, looking a bit uncertain. What should I try first? How about something simple? Tom suggested. Let's start with ordering a coffee. It's easy and familiar. At his encouragement, Lyra selected the cafe scenario. Instantly, the pod's interior shifted to resemble a bustling Earth coffeehouse. Tom stepped in next to her, the virtual environment responding to his movements as well. This is so lifelike, Lyra said, turning in awe to take it all in. It's as if I'm really there. That's the point, Tom said with a grin. You can practice interacting with people here without any pressure. As Lyra approached the virtual counter, she hesitated, looking to Tom for guidance. What do I say? Tom leaned closer, his voice calm. Just start with, I'd like a coffee, please. Lyra nodded and repeated the phrase. The simulated barista responded, and a brief back and forth ensued. Soon, Lyra had successfully ordered her coffee and was holding a digital cup in her hands. I did it, she said, her voice light with triumph. It wasn't so hard after all. See, Tom said, it's all about breaking things down into smaller steps. Once you get used to this, you can try more complex scenarios. They spent the next hour exploring different simulations together. Tom chose an interactive museum tour and narrated details about the artifacts, while Lyra followed along and asked questions. In another scenario, they attended a mock meeting, and Tom helped her understand human idioms and phrases that were unfamiliar to her. I never realized how many metaphors you humans use, Lyra said with a small laugh. It's like your language is full of little puzzles. Well, humans love creativity, Tom said. We're always coming up with new ways to say things. It makes for interesting conversations. By the time they finished, Lyra had grown more confident, her initial shyness fading as she learned to navigate these new social landscapes. Tom felt a growing sense of camaraderie between them. This shared experience, bridging their two vastly different worlds, felt natural and rewarding. Before they left the center, the guide handed Lyra a small device. This personal translator will help you in real time as you continue exploring Earth. Use it along with the skills you've learned here, and you'll be speaking like a local in no time. Lyra accepted it with a grateful smile. Thank you so much. This has been an incredible experience. As they stepped back outside into the bustling city streets, Lyra turned to Tom. I never could have done this without your help. Thank you, Tom. Anytime, he said. This is just the start. Soon you'll be teaching me a thing or two about Cyrania. She smiled, and they walked down the street together, the city's energy surrounding them as they headed off to their next adventure. Chapter 4: Bonds of the Beating Hearts. The park was an oasis of calm amidst the bustle of the city. Lush greenery surrounded gently winding paths, and small ponds reflected the soft golden hues of the afternoon sun. Tom and Lyra strolled slowly, taking in the serene beauty around them. Nearby, children played on the grass while couples sat on benches, engaged in quiet conversations. Tom glanced at Lyra, who seemed mesmerized by the environment. What do you think of this place? He asked, gesturing to the open field ahead. Lyra tilted her head thoughtfully, her shimmering eyes reflecting the sunlight. It's lovely, different from the floating gardens on Cyrania, but it has its own charm. Everything here feels so rooted. Rooted is a good word for it, Tom agreed. I think that's why so many people come here, just to feel grounded again. As they reached a shaded grove, Tom noticed Lyra slowing down. Something on your mind? He asked, his voice soft. Lyra hesitated, then smiled faintly. I'm just taking it all in. The sounds, the scents, even the feel of the breeze. It's all so vivid here. He nodded, understanding. I suppose when you're on a new planet, everything feels a little heightened, like your senses are constantly discovering. Yes, Lyra said, and being with you makes it feel less overwhelming. Tom smiled at that. I'm glad. It's been nice having you here. Makes me see the city and the park a little differently. They continued walking, their conversation drifting between casual observations and deeper topics. Tom shared stories from his childhood, the time he and his brother built a treehouse that barely stayed upright, and the family road trips to national parks. Lyra listened intently, her laughter ringing softly at his more humorous tales. "I wish I could show you Cyrenia's floating gardens," Lyra said at one point. "They're suspended on natural air currents, and the flowers have this glow at twilight. It's as if the entire sky blooms." Tom's imagination stirred at her description. "Sounds incredible. Maybe one day I'll get to see it." Lyra gave a slight nod, but her smile faded a bit. "I hope so. It's hard to imagine Earthlings and Cyrenians traveling freely to each other's worlds. There's still so much distance, both physically and culturally." Tom stopped, turning to face her. "Lyra, if there's one thing humans are good at, it's finding ways to close those distances. It might take time, but that's how we learn, by reaching out, bit by bit." She looked up at him, her expression a mixture of curiosity and something deeper. "I've noticed that about humans. You have this drive to connect, even when things seem impossible." They stood there for a moment, the silence between them warm and unhurried. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, carrying the scent of blooming flowers. Without thinking, Tom reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from Lyra's face. She didn't pull away, her eyes meeting his. "Lyra," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "This might sound strange, but I feel like I've known you a lot longer than just a few days." Her gaze softened. "It doesn't sound strange at all. I feel it too." Before either of them could say anything else, their hands found each other. It was a simple touch, but it sent a current through them both. Tom stepped closer, unsure of what to say next but not wanting to break the connection. Lyra broke the silence first. "Is this normal for humans? To feel so strongly, so quickly?" Tom chuckled softly, a little nervous. "I wouldn't say it's normal, but sometimes you meet someone and it just feels right, like everything aligns." She nodded slowly. "That's how it feels for me too." As the sun dipped lower, casting a warm glow over the park, they found themselves sitting on a bench beneath a sprawling oak tree. The conversation turned quieter, their words coming slower, more deliberate. Tom told her about his work in genetic research, and Lyra shared memories of Cyrenia's festivals, where entire villages would gather to celebrate the changing seasons. At some point, Tom realized he was holding her hand again. He glanced down at their interwoven fingers and smiled. "You're very different from anyone I've met, and not just because you're from Cyrenia. There's something special about you." Lyra tilted her head, a small smile playing on her lips. "You make me feel the same way, Tom. I've traveled to many worlds, but you make me feel like I belong." The words hung in the air between them, gentle and unhurried. The park, with all its sounds and movements, seemed to fade away for a moment. They were just two people, two beings, sitting together, finding common ground in a world that suddenly felt a little smaller, a little more connected. As the day turned to evening, they rose from the bench, walking slowly back toward the city. Tom couldn't shake the feeling that this moment, this bond, was something he'd been searching for without even realizing it. And as Lyra looked up at him, her expression full of trust and quiet warmth, he knew she felt the same. Chapter 5: A Revelation Through Technology. The lab was quiet that morning, the usual hum of equipment muted in the early hour. Tom sat at his workstation, calibrating a scanner while Lyra observed the array of machines around her. She had visited before, but the complexity of human technology still fascinated her. She ran her fingers lightly over the smooth, cold surface of the analysis station. "This all seems so advanced," Lyra said, her voice thoughtful. "On Cyrenia, our methods are more organic. We rely on natural resonances and bioluminescent markers to study biology." Tom glanced up from his console, smiling. "Organic systems sound beautiful, but sometimes having a machine do the heavy lifting can save a lot of time." Lyra nodded, but her eyes remained on the equipment. "I would like to understand this process better. Perhaps Could you show me how it works? Of course, Tom said. He pulled up a 3D hologram of a human DNA strand and pointed out the various segments. This is what we start with. We break it down into readable sequences, compare it against a database, and then map out the connections like a family tree, but on a molecular level. Fascinating, Lyra murmured. So you can trace ancestry? Detect patterns of evolution? Exactly. It's not just about health diagnostics or crime solving. It's also a way to understand who we are and how we're connected. Tom hesitated, then added, Would you like to try? Lyra raised her brows in surprise. Me? I wouldn't know where to begin. I'll guide you, Tom said, gesturing for her to step closer. He slid over a set of interface gloves. Here, put these on. Lyra slipped on the gloves, marveling at how they instantly adapted to her slender fingers. Tom stood beside her, his hand hovering over hers as he showed her the correct gestures. She followed his instructions, and the hologram shifted, expanding into a glowing tree of data points. There you go, Tom said. You're interacting with the genetic map. Lyra's antennae quivered in excitement. It's amazing. So intuitive. Tom's voice softened. I thought you might enjoy it. I remember you saying how much you wanted to learn more about Earth's methods. They worked together for a while, Tom guiding her through the intricacies of human genomic data. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting a golden glow through the lab's windows, Lyra seemed to relax, her earlier hesitation replaced with a genuine enthusiasm. At one point, she turned to him, her opalescent eyes bright. Tom, would it be possible to scan my DNA? Just to see what it looks like? Tom hesitated, unsure. You mean, compare it to Earth's genetic markers? Yes, Lyra said, her voice firm. I want to know more about the connections between our species. It might help me understand why I feel so at ease here, and why it's been so easy to communicate with you. He studied her expression. You're sure? Lyra nodded. I trust you. Tom sighed, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. All right then, let's do it. He prepared the scanner, inputting the parameters for a cross-species analysis. Lyra sat patiently, her hands resting in her lap as the machine whirred softly. Tom stood beside her, monitoring the progress. The results came through faster than he expected. As the data assembled on the display, Tom's brow furrowed. He double-checked the markers, ran a secondary comparison, and finally leaned back, his mind racing. Tom, Lyra asked, her tone curious. What is it? Tom hesitated, then turned to her. Lyra, your DNA, it's not purely Serenian. Her antennae twitched, and her gaze became more focused. What do you mean? Tom gestured to the screen, where the holographic representation of her genetic profile floated. You have human markers in your DNA. Not just a few, enough to suggest a significant connection. Lyra's eyes widened. Are you certain? I double-checked. You're part human, Lyra. For a moment, silence filled the lab. Lyra studied the display as if it might reveal some hidden truth. Finally, she looked back at Tom, her voice quiet. That would explain a lot. I've always felt different from others on Cyrania, drawn to the stars, to other worlds. But I never imagined. Tom stepped closer, his voice gentle. Maybe that's why you feel at ease here. You're not just a visitor. In some way, Earth is part of you. Lyra nodded slowly, as if trying to absorb this new reality. It changes everything. My place in the universe, my identity. It doesn't have to change who you are, Tom said. You're still you. This just means there's more to discover. About yourself, about both our peoples. Lyra looked up at him, her expression a mix of wonder and uncertainty. Tom, thank you for showing me this. I don't know what it all means yet, but I'm glad I learned it with you. He placed a hand on her shoulder. We'll figure it out together. Chapter 6. Navigating the Storm. The research facility was quiet, save for the low hum of equipment. Tom and Lyra stood side by side at a large console, the room illuminated by the cool glow of holographic screens. The DNA results had left them both thoughtful. and today's task was to follow the threads that might explain the origins of her human lineage. Tom leaned over the console, typing commands. Okay, I'm pulling up old genetic archives. These were collected decades ago when Earth first started cataloging interstellar lifeforms. Lyra peered at the screen, her antennae moving slightly as she took in the intricate charts and patterns. What are we looking for exactly? A name? A date? Tom scratched his head, thinking. I'm not sure. Maybe a recorded exchange between humans and Serenians, or a common ancestor species. The console beeped, and a new set of data appeared. Tom gestured toward the screen. Here's something. A research expedition from 74 years ago. They encountered a species that had remarkably human-like traits but wasn't entirely human. Lyra stepped closer, her gaze focused. What planet? Delta Proxima, Tom said. It's in the same sector as Sirenia, if I remember right. Lyra nodded. I've heard of it. It's a barren world now, but Sirenians have stories about settlers who vanished there. Some say they integrated into other communities, though no one knows for sure. Tom scrolled through the records. It says here the team collected DNA samples and noted how close the genetic sequences were to human markers. But then the trail stops. No follow-up records, no conclusions. Lyra frowned. So we're looking at a dead end? Not necessarily, Tom said. Sometimes these old archives just didn't get updated properly. If we can find someone who worked on the original study, we might get more answers. But would they still be alive? Lyra asked, her tone uncertain. 74 years is a long time. Tom tapped his chin. Some of them might be, or their research notes could have been passed down. Scientists tend to keep detailed records. Lyra glanced at him, a faint smile appearing. You sound like you're speaking from experience. Tom laughed softly. I might be guilty of keeping a few too many notebooks in my office. Come on, let's check the personnel files. They began cross-referencing names from the old expedition with current scientific databases. The process was painstaking, searching through layers of incomplete records and defunct organizations, but gradually, they pieced together a few leads. This name, Lyra said, pointing to a record. Dr. Mathis Rendell. He led the original study on Delta Proxima. Tom pulled up a more recent listing. And he published a paper 2 years ago. That means he's still around. Lyra's antennae twitched with excitement. Could we contact him? I don't see why not, Tom replied. I'll send him a message. If we're lucky, he might respond quickly. As Tom composed the message, Lyra paced the room, her movements restless. I've always felt like there was something missing, she said. Like part of my identity was just out of reach. Now, finally, we might have the chance to learn the truth. Tom glanced up, his expression kind. We'll figure it out together. You're not alone in this. Lyra paused, looking at him. I know, and that makes it easier. Thank you, Tom. He smiled, then hit send. Message sent. Now we wait. The reply came surprisingly fast, within the hour. Dr. Rendell was intrigued by their inquiry and agreed to a video call. Tom quickly set up the conference room, and soon, Rendell's face appeared on the large display. He was an elderly man, his white hair neatly combed and his piercing blue eyes sharp despite his age. Dr. Rendell, Tom began, thank you for taking the time to speak with us. I'm Tom Simmons, and this is Lyra. She's from Sirenia. Rendell nodded politely. It's a pleasure. I understand you have questions about my old work on Delta Proxima? Lyra stepped forward. Yes, doctor. My DNA shows human markers. Tom believes it might be linked to the research you conducted there. Rendell leaned back, his expression thoughtful. I remember that expedition well. The planet was desolate, but we found evidence that it had once supported life. And the DNA samples we collected, yes, there were anomalies. Human-like traits, but also something distinctly alien. What happened to those samples? Tom asked. They were stored in a secure archive, Rendell said. But the project was abruptly shelved. The lead institution ran out of funding, and interest waned. To my knowledge, no one followed up. Lyra's face fell. So the answers are locked away? Not necessarily, Rendell replied. I have my own notes from that time. I couldn't let the data just vanish. If you're willing, I can share what I have. Lyra's expression brightened. We'd be very grateful. Rendell smiled faintly. It'll take some time to sort through, but I'll send you what I can. Just be patient. Some of these records are quite old. Thank you, Doctor, Tom said. We appreciate your help. After the call ended, Lyra turned to Tom, her excitement tempered by lingering uncertainty. Do you think this will be enough to understand? It's a start, Tom said. We're piecing together a puzzle that's been scattered for decades. It might take a while, but we'll get there. Lyra nodded slowly. As long as I'm not facing it alone. You're not, Tom assured her. We're in this together. Chapter 7, Galactic Reckoning. Tom paced nervously outside the conference hall, tugging at the cuffs of his shirt. The grand marble building was abuzz with activity. Delegates from dozens of alien worlds milling about, holographic displays advertising cultural exchange programs, and roving reporters catching snippets of conversation. The air thrummed with excitement and a touch of tension. I don't know about this, Tom muttered, glancing at Lyra, who stood calm and poised beside him. I mean, presenting in front of the Galactic Relations Committee? That's a big deal. Lyra smiled gently, her calm demeanor contrasting Tom's nervous energy. You've presented your research before. This isn't so different. And you're not alone. We're doing this together. He exhaled, still uncertain. I guess I just feel like I'm not qualified for something this big. These are leaders and ambassadors. They shape interstellar policies. Lyra placed a hand on his arm. You're more than qualified. You understand the science and the human perspective. I'll share what I know about Cyrania and my experiences. Together, we'll be fine. Tom met her gaze and saw the quiet confidence there. He nodded. Okay, let's do this. Inside the hall, the audience buzzed with murmured conversations as they took their seats. The stage was a sleek platform flanked by two massive holographic displays. A tall, stately woman who served as the committee chair took the podium. Today's session is an important one, she began. We have before us a unique case that bridges the gap between species, both literally and metaphorically. I'll let the presenters speak for themselves. She stepped aside, gesturing for Tom and Lyra to approach the stage. Tom cleared his throat as he stepped up, his nerves giving way to a determined focus. Thank you, Chairwoman. My name is Tom Simmons. I'm a human genetic researcher from Earth. And this is Lyra, who hails from the planet Cyrania. The murmuring died down as the audience focused on them. Lyra's shimmering skin caught the light as she stepped forward, her antennae moving slightly, a subtle but confident presence. We stand here today, Tom continued, to share a discovery that goes beyond what we thought we knew about our species and our history. It's a story that started with curiosity and led to something far more profound. He gestured to the holographic display, which now showed a glowing genetic sequence. This is Lyra's DNA. As you can see, it contains markers that are undeniably human. Not similar, identical. Our genetic overlap isn't a coincidence. It's evidence of a shared history, one that predates any documented contact between our worlds. Lyra stepped in, her voice calm yet captivating. On Cyrania, we've always seen Earth as distant, a world of mystery. But this discovery shows that our people and yours aren't so different. We share something fundamental, something we must explore further. The audience was still, every eye on them. Tom continued, gaining confidence as he spoke. This isn't just about Lyra's DNA. It's about what it means for all of us. Our histories might be more intertwined than we ever imagined. If we can understand how our species connected in the past, we might find new ways to connect now and in the future. Lyra nodded. On Cyrania, we have stories of ancient travelers, beings who crossed the stars, forging bonds we thought were long forgotten. Perhaps Earth was once part of that network, and our shared genetics are the proof. A hand went up in the audience, and a tall, reptilian delegate with deep green scales stood. Are you suggesting that humans and Serenians share a common ancestor? Or that interbreeding occurred in the distant past? Tom responded carefully. We don't have all the answers yet. It's possible that a common ancestor existed. It's also possible that ancient travelers facilitated gene exchange. What we know for sure is that our DNA tells a story of connection. Another hand rose, this time a human delegate in a crisp Navy uniform. What do you propose we do with this knowledge? How do we turn it into something tangible? Lyra smiled at Tom before addressing the room. We propose collaboration, sharing knowledge, research, and stories. We want to encourage travel between our worlds, cultural exchanges, joint scientific ventures. If we begin working together now, we can uncover more of our shared history and build a more unified future. The audience murmured in agreement. A representative from a distant world, her flowing robes shimmering with embedded lights, leaned forward. What challenges do you foresee in forging this connection? Surely not all will accept the idea so readily. Tom nodded. There will be skepticism. People may question the validity of the findings or resist the idea of shared heritage. But challenges are opportunities. By continuing this dialogue, by presenting more evidence and fostering genuine interactions, we can address those doubts and build trust. The chairwoman rose again, addressing the room. Thank you, Mr. Simmons and Lyra of Sirenia, for your presentation. This discovery is indeed significant. It gives us much to consider as we move forward in interstellar cooperation. Tom and Lyra stepped back, the audience applauding as the holographic displays dimmed. As they left the stage and returned to the quiet corridors outside, Tom finally exhaled a long breath. Well, that was something, he said with a nervous laugh. Lyra smiled at him, her antennae flicking slightly. You were brilliant, Tom. Thanks, he said, meeting her gaze. So were you. They walked side by side, the energy of the conference hall behind them. Tom felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing they'd taken a step toward something greater. Something that could change the way their two worlds saw each other. And perhaps, something that would deepen the bond they had already begun to share. Chapter 8. A New Dawn. The park was calm in the early morning, its trails bathed in soft sunlight. Tom and Lyra walked side by side along a gravel path, their steps falling into an easy rhythm. The air was crisp, and the smell of damp earth mingled with the faint aroma of nearby blooming flowers. Tom adjusted the strap of his messenger bag, glancing at Lyra. Did you sleep all right last night? Lyra nodded, her antennae flicking slightly. I did, though I kept thinking about the conference, about everything we shared. Tom smiled. It was a big moment. I think we made an impact. They walked in silence for a few more steps, passing an elderly couple sitting on a bench. Birds flitted between the trees, their songs adding a melodic backdrop to the quiet morning. I never imagined, Lyra began, that I'd be standing here on Earth, looking at my own DNA results, presenting to a room of ambassadors. It all feels surreal. Tom looked over at her, his expression thoughtful. Life's full of surprises, sometimes good ones. And meeting you, Lyra, that's one of the best surprises I've had in a long time. Lyra's gaze softened, and she stopped walking. Turning to him, she placed a hand gently on his arm. Tom, I couldn't have done any of this without you. You made me feel at home on a world that isn't mine. You helped me discover who I really am. Tom's cheeks flushed, and he looked down for a moment, then back into her eyes. It wasn't just me. You were the one brave enough to start this journey. All I did was walk alongside you. Lyra stepped closer, her voice quieter now. And I want to keep walking with you, not just through this park, but wherever this path takes us. Tom felt a warmth in his chest. He reached up, brushing a strand of Lyra's hair away from her face. Me too. They stood there for a long moment, the world around them falling away. Then, as if by instinct, Tom leaned in and Lyra met him halfway. Their lips brushed, a gentle connection that quickly deepened. It wasn't rushed or uncertain. It was a natural step, as though they had been moving toward this moment since the day they met. When they finally parted, Tom let out a soft laugh, his forehead resting lightly against hers. That was perfect, Lyra finished, a smile spreading across her face. Hand in hand, they continued down the path, talking quietly about their plans. Tom mentioned a trip he wanted to take, back to Delta Proxima to look at the old archives in person. Lyra agreed, eager to learn more about the origins of her human markers. As they rounded a bend in the trail, they found themselves in a meadow surrounded by tall, swaying grasses. A group of children played nearby, their laughter floating on the breeze. Tom stopped and turned to Lyra. You know, when I first saw you at the transit hub, I just thought I was helping a stranger. I never imagined us. Lyra's expression grew warm, and I never thought I'd find someone who makes me feel so at home, even on an unfamiliar world. Tom, you've become so much more than a guide. You've become my partner. Tom tightened his grip on her hand. Then let's see where this partnership takes us. They sat down together on a nearby bench, watching the children play and the sunlight dance on the meadow. They talked of future travels, of sharing their stories with others, of building something new together. Two individuals from different worlds, united by something far greater than chance. As the morning stretched into day, Tom and Lyra rose and began their walk back toward the city. The path ahead was uncertain, but they were ready for it. They had each other, and that was enough.